Okay, you should see it now, right? The YouTube.
Yes, Prabhu. Yeah.
Okay, so we are resuming from verse
33.
33.
Yeah.
So this verse comes in the section of the conversation between Devas and Vishvarupa. Right? So Brahma advises the Devas to take shelter of Vishvarup, and Vishvarup is a little reluctant because of his status. That Vishwarup's father Twashta is the brother of Indra, right? So this is where this verse, the uh, uh, the Devas are trying to reassure Vishwarupa. So verse 33. Nagaryanti hayatreshu yavistangri abhivadanam chandobhya niyatra na brahman vayojayashtasya karanam. The demigods continued, do not fear criticism for being younger than us. Such etiquette does not apply in regard to Vedic mantras. Except in relationship to Vedic mantras, seniority is determined by age. But one may offer respectful obeisance even to a younger person who is advanced in chanting Vedic mantras. Therefore, although you are junior in relationship to us, you may become our priest without hesitation. Right. So this is Indra addressing a possible objection from Vishvarupa that he has the position of being the son of Indra, because Twashta is the brother of Indra. They're both the sons of Kashyap and Aditi. So, literally speaking, a nephew, but in Vedic consideration, he's a son. So Indra says that is true, that age-based seniority is a consideration, right? So there is age-based seniority and there is relationship-based seniority. And from both perspectives, Indra is senior. And sometimes the age and relationship may be in conflict with one another, right? So sometimes, especially, we'll see that like in the case of Shantanu marrying marrying
Sachavati?
Matsyagandha, right? Satyavati, marrying Satyavati. Bhishma was actually older than Satyavati. So age-based, he was older. But from a relation perspective, he considered her like his mother. Now here we see another consideration, which is based on one's spiritual advancement. So Indra uses the index of Chandubhaya. Chand means mantras. Chand actually means meter, but here in contextually it means mantras. So, which translates to spiritual advancement. Right? So he's saying that you're more advanced than me because you're spiritually more advanced. Right? In Vaishnava tradition, there are three kinds of seniority. There is seniority based on age, there is seniority based on initiation, and then there is seniority based on realizations. Right? So sometimes you will see all three may align. Sometimes you may see they may not all align. We we see different scenarios here. So here initiation is not really being considered, but more the fact that Vishwarupa is a Brahman, has a higher status, and is spiritually more advanced. Now, what are some of the other examples of this, where one took shelter, even though it contradicted conventional seniority? Right. So one example is Devahuti and Lord Kapila. That Lord Kapila, both by age and relation, was junior to Devahuti. He was her son and obviously younger to her. But Devahuti accepted him as a spiritual master because he was the personality of Godhead. And you see in the conversation, Devahuti takes a very humble position. She's addressing him as my Lord, and in the mood of a disciple. Another case that we see is the example of Parikshit Maharaj and Sukdev Goswami. That Sukdev Goswami appeared. He was a 16-year-old boy, and Parikshit Maharaj was he was a lot older at the time. But yet he takes shelter, and not only him, but it's mentioned how very, very ancient sages like Vasishtha and Vishwamitra, they also sat in front of him and listened to him. So they were acknowledging his spiritual advancement. Some cases it is declined when conventional seniority contradicts spiritual seniority, right? So where do we see this in the Bhagavatam? Does anybody remember? So we see this in the third canto of the Bhagavatam, when Vidur, he approached Uddhav and he says, "You tell me more about the." So Uddhav was returning and he was full of ecstasy, and Vidur wanted to hear more from him. And Uddhav directs him to Maitreya Rishi. Right? And one of the reasons that is given is that Uddhav was very reluctant to instruct Vidur, who was at the status of his father. One case where putting too much of emphasis on conventional seniority resulted in problem is when Jay and Vijay disrespected the four Kumaras. Now, the four Kumaras, they appeared as 5-year-old children, which was the reason Jay Vijay stopped them. Now, after Brahma, they're the oldest jivas in the universe. But Jay and Vijay simply looked at the fact that they were children, 5 years old, and they did not consider the fact that there were other aspects for advancements, and stopped them, and therefore they were chastised. Now, the same four Kumars, when they appeared in front of Prithu Maharaj, what did he do? He immediately got up from his throne. He gave them an elevated seat. He worshipped them. So, he understood the position correctly. Prabhupada in purport, he quotes Chanakya Pandit, where he says that that one may accept education from a member of a lower social order. Nichadipya uttamam jnanam. Right, and there's another verse by Chanakya Pandit that also says that one should accept gold from a dirty place. Right? Same understanding that one is known by one's qualities of one's knowledge, and not so much by one's material consideration. Prabhupada also quotes Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Kiva viprakiba nyasi shudra kenanya ye Krishna tattva veta se guru haya. And so this is the famous verse that Mahaprabhu spoke to Ramananda Rai on the banks of the river Godavari. when they met, and Mahaprabhu was asking Ramananda Roy to speak about transcendental topics, and out of humility, he was reluctant to do. Mahaprabhu was a sannyasi, a Brahman. Ramananda Roy, he was a Kshatriya. He was a at that time at least, he was a minister. But then Prabhu says, Kiva Vipra Kiva Nyasi Shudra Ke Naya, right? Who's a Brahman, who is a Kshatriya, who's a Shudra? Ye Krishna Tattva Veda. The real Guru is one who is an expert in Krishna Tattva. Okay, next verse, 34. Sri Rishirvacha Abhyartita Suraganahe Purahita Mahatapa Savishwarupastanaha Prasanna Salakshanaya Gira. Sukdev Goswami continued. When all the demigods requested the great Vishwarup to be their priest, Vishwarup, who was advanced in austerities, was very pleased. He replied to them as follows. So the next 4 verses, or the 4 verses from here until verse 37, is the response of Vishwarupa to the Devas. And then from the response, we can understand that Vishwarupa was not pleased because he thought that now he has a very elevated position, or now the Devas will be giving him obeisances. He was pleased because of his ability to render some service. Right? That's why Sukadeva Goswami glorifies Vishwarupa also in this context. He says Mahatapa, right? One who is advanced in austerity. Such a person is not much concerned about external respect, honor, or dishonor. Verse 35. Sri Vishwarupa Vacha Vigrahitam Dharmashile Brahmavarcha Upavayam Katam Numa Vithonatha Lokeshera Vyachitam Pratyakshayanti Tachishya Sa Eva Swartha Uchyate. Sri Vishwarup said, O demigods, although the acceptance of priesthood is decried as causing the loss of previously acquired Brahmanical power, how can someone like me refuse to accept your personal request? You are all exalted commanders of the entire universe. I am a disciple and must take many lessons from you. Therefore, I cannot refuse you. I must agree for my own benefit. So such a wonderful verse that is so many nuances built into it, right? So he talks about first disambiguating the notion that becoming the priest of the Devas is something that will benefit him materially, right? In fact, he says the opposite, that that the acceptance of priesthood is decried as causing the loss of previously acquired Brahmanical power. Why is that? Because the Guru takes on the reactions of the disciple. Right? So Srila Prabhupada had mentioned about this when he was sick. He mentioned that his health was deteriorating because his disciples were doing all kinds of nonsense activities. Right? And then at another point he said that it's a risk I have to take on behalf of my Guru Maharaj, that I continue to take on disciples, because every time a disciple fell, Srila Prabhupada was concerned not only about the disciple but also the reaction that the Guru has to experience. And once I was talking about this with Rompad Maharaj, and he was also sharing, he didn't tell me the name of the sannyasi, but he told me there's one sannyasi that I was actually sharing with him how uh, he had developed really bad cases of headache, how his migraine would become almost unbearable. And because of that, at one point, he simply stopped taking disciples. So Vishwarup makes this point here. Now, he's not criticizing the devas that you're going to do nonsense activities, but it is a risk that the guru take. Then he says that I am your disciple and must take many lessons from you. And so this is the mood of humility that he is genuinely manifesting. So he's saying, therefore, I cannot refuse you. So even though they are asking him to become his guru, he's accepting it as a service. He's accepting it as as a way to serve the exalted commanders of the universe. And he says, I must agree for my own benefit. So we see a contradiction here, right? He begins by saying that if I accept you as my disciple, there is a possibility that I might lose my previously acquired Brahminical power. But I must agree for my own benefit. So how do we resolve the two? The fulcrum that resolves this is the mode of service that he is manifesting. He's saying that for me, the best thing is to serve you, even if it is at personal risk. Right? So we see this strong mode of humility. We also will later on see how there is a difference in this relationship between Vishwarup and Indra and the Devas. Vishwarup takes on this relationship as a real guru. Indra and the Devas, they take on this relationship as simply to achieve as a means to an end. So they were in a situation where the asuras were attacking them. They were without any shelter. They were instructed by Brahma, and that's where they approached Vishwarupa. Right. So that mood is different, and then we will see that in the 9th chapter, that how this difference in the mood manifests. In the purport, Prabhupada writes that the professions of a qualified Brahman are Patan Pathan, Yajan Yajan, Dan, Pratigraha. The word Yajan and Yajan means that a Brahman becomes the priest of the populace for the sake of their elevation. One who accepts the post of spiritual master neutralizes the sinful reaction of Yajman. So Yajman is one who sits in the Yajna, who is, so to speak, the client. So in a way, these are the three kinds of spiritual masters, or three kinds of Brahmans that you see. There are some that will do Patan Patan, that will read and teach you. Right? These are the ones who are in the Gurukul, who are essentially instructing spiritual masters. Then there is the Yajan Yajan. The Yajan Yajan are essentially the Purohits. Right? The Purohits are the ones that take on a Yajman, and they will perform various, mostly Karamkand rituals for them. Like in Mahabharata, you see that when the Pandavas were in the forest, then they actually felt that because they did not have a Purohit, they were missing out on doing all the Karamkand yagyas. So that's why they approached Dhaumya. And Dhaumya agreed to be their Purohit. Purohit essentially means Purna Hita. Hita means beneficiary and Purna means complete. So one who is a complete beneficiary. So while they focus on Karamkand, they also give spiritual instructions. And and Dan Pratigra, the third kind of Brahmins that essentially um, uh, they accept charity and they give in charity. So when they accept in charity, they also accept the reactions, and they give in charity, and understanding is that on the strength of their own austerities, they're also able to neutralize the reactions. That's why it is said that more than giving in charity, taking in charity can be a cause of problem, because if you take in charity, you are implicitly also accepting the reactions of the person who's giving you in charity. So in older times, when people took in charity, then they made sure that they were taking from a qualified person, and vice versa. The person giving in charity also ensured that the person who is receiving is qualified in the sense qualified to take the reactions. Okay, so then Prabhupada says that the results of pious acts previously performed by a priest or spiritual master are diminished. This is by the act of taking on a disciple. Therefore, priesthood is not accepted by learned Brahmanas. Nevertheless, the greatly learned Brahman Vishwarup became the priest of the demigods because of his profound respect for them. Okay, moving on to the next verse, 36. Akinchana hedanam shiloshanam tene nivritita sadhu satkriyaha katham vigarayam nukaromi adhishvaraha parodhasham hrishyati yena dhurmatihi. O exalted governors of various planets, the true Brahman, who has no material possessions, maintains himself by the profession of accepting silochan. In other words, he picks up grains left in the field and on the ground in the wholesale marketplace. By this means, householder Brahmins, who actually abide by the principles of austerity and penance, maintain themselves and their families, maintain themselves and their families, and perform all necessary pious activities. A Brahman who desires to achieve happiness by gaining wealth through professional priesthood must certainly have a very low mind. How shall I accept such priesthood? So previously, Vishwarup had already said that I accept priesthood. This verse expresses the internal conflict in Vishwarup. So while he was saying he's accepting, he is also reflecting on the, the potential downfall of accepting such a priesthood, right? So in his mind, he is putting on the two ends of the balance the pros and the cons. So the pro is that he has profound respect for the devas. The pro is that he has been instructed by the devas and he would like to do service to them. The con is that one who takes on the disciple also takes on the reactions of the disciple. Here in this verse, he talks about the principle of austerity of priesthood. That a true Brahman lives off Shilonchan. So Shila, it refers to corn that is uh, uh, that is left on the field by the farmer, and unchanam is the grains that is left in the market. Right? So shilochan is essentially grains that are either rejected by the farmer because they're unsuitable, or they're discarded by the merchant because nobody buys it. Right? Which means same that they are unsuitable. So the Brahmanas, they simply live off these grains, which means that they they live very, very simply with austerity. However, as a priest of the Devas, Vishwarupa will be treated with a similar level of opulence. Right? So he understands that this way can be a cause of his downfall. Right? And he's indirectly saying that there are Brahmins who desire wealth and opulence, and because of that, they become priests of those who are wealthy and opulent. But as one who is a real Brahman, he is looking upon this as something that will be an austerity for him to live in the opulence that his disciples will bestow upon him. Prabhupada, in the purport, he talks about a real life case of a Brahman in Krishnanagar near Navadvip, and there was a local zamindar by the name of Raja Krishnachandra, and he was very much taken in by the Brahman. So he wanted to help him materially. So the Brahman, when the king offered this, the Brahman refused to accept, and he said that his current situation is fine, that he takes some rice by his disciples, cooks vegetables of tamarind leaves. So said no need for me to accept any help from the zamindar. So Prabhupada says the conclusion is that although a Brahman may receive such opulence from his disciples, he should not utilize the rewards of his priesthood for his personal benefit. He must use them for the service of the personality of Godhead. Right? And this is a principle that Srila Prabhupada demonstrated perfectly himself. That he began the society with almost no money, and later on he was literally getting millions of dollars, but his position remained the same, that whatever he got, he used it in the service of the Lord, essentially for preaching purposes. Okay, let's move on to verse 37. Tathapi na pratibruyam gurubhi parthitam kiyat bhavatam parthitam sarvam pranerarthescha sadhe. All of you are my superiors. Therefore, although accepting priesthood is sometimes reproachable, I cannot refuse even a small request from you. I agree to be your priest. I shall fulfill your request by dedicating my life and possessions. So the previous verse was essentially Vishwarup articulating his dilemma. This is his conclusion. He kind of summarizes his thought process, right? So what are the cons? What are the dangers? He says that although you are my superiors, which means that he is younger in age and in status to Indra and the Devas. Second, he says this, that sincere Brahmins do not accept priesthood for two reasons. One, they lose their Brahma Tejas, and the second is that they lose their austerity. So they lose their Brahma Tejas because of receiving the sinful reactions of the disciples. And they lose their austerity because of receiving the opulence of their disciples. Right? And the third point he makes is that such people are considered to be low-minded, which means that people who are accepting priesthood for material reasons. Right? So he gives the three reasons. Then he gives the reasons that for which he should take priesthood. So he says that I cannot refuse an order that is given to me by my superiors. Right? And this is an opportunity for me to serve. Right? So the two reasons are stronger than the three contrary reasons. Right? So because of these two reasons in favor, he accepts the priesthood of the Devas. Okay, verse 38. Shri Badranairvacha Devevam Pratishutya Vishwarupa Mahatapa Paurahityam Vritaschakre Paramena Samadhina. Sri Sukdev Goswami continued, O king, after making this promise to the demigods, the exalted Vishwarup, surrounded by the demigods, performed the necessary priestly activities with great enthusiasm and attention. So in 3 verses, we will see that Vishwarup is teaching the Devas Narayan Kavach. Prabhupada writes in the purport that the word samadhina is very important. Samadhi means complete absorption with an undiverted mind. Vishwarup was also the most learned Brahman. Not only he accepted the request of the Devas, but he took it very seriously. And then he performed the activities of the priesthood samadhina with complete absorption. Right? So Prabhupada says, what does that mean? That he did not accept the priesthood for his own benefit, but only for the benefit of the Devas. Right? And Prabhupada says that Pura means family and Hita means benefit. So same word Purohit. One way is that one who benefits the entire family, and Purna Hita also is one who benefits one completely. So Prabhupada says another meaning of the word Pura is first. A priest's first duty is to see that his disciples benefit spiritually and materially by all means. Then he is satisfied. A priest should never be interested in performing Vedic rituals for his own personal benefit. And that is very much in contradiction with the Smarta Brahmins now, right? So when you see the priests, their main focus, so when I had gone to Prayag for taking bath in the Kumbh, then even though I'm used to it, but it was still a little surprising that, a priest came by and I was with some other people, they wanted to engage the priest. And they're expert in how to get the most. So they know that this is a small duration of time. After that, none of us will see one another. And then he started off first by doing the Sankalp mantra. And he was doing it accurately, but I could see that later on he added phrases meant to scare the person. That now that I have committed to this sankalp, I will not take a step back. Otherwise, all my purity will be destroyed. All my good pious activity will be destroyed. The purpose of my visit will be destroyed. And he was making us repeat after him. And then after that, then he started saying that, okay, as an offering to Ganga, how much? 500 or 1,000. So it was almost like if you go to the restaurants now, they have this, you order and they have this iPad kind of thing, and it comes pre-filled with the tip amount, 20% or 15% or 10%, right? Very small on the lower corner, they're custom, but otherwise it's pre-filled by 20% or 15%. So I said, okay, for Ganga, 500 or 1,000, for Yamuna, 500 or 1,000, to feed the priests, 500 or 1,000, in order to for worshipping the sun god, 1,000 or 2,000, right? And he just said, don't stop the conversation. This is the puja that's going on. If you stop it, everything will be destroyed. Right? And by the time he ended, he had a fair amount of donation. So current day and age, that's the focus. That one who performs Vedic rituals or who's performing this kind of karma kand, it's not even karma kand, right? They're just doing it because karma kand is also purohit, like the benefit of the family, like Prabhupada says, purnahit, complete benefit, material and spiritual. But that mood is not there now. Okay, so let's move on to verse 39. Two more verses left. Suratvisham Shriyam Guptam Ashunasya Vidyaya Achityanan Mahendraya Vaishnavya Vidyaya Vibhuhu. The opponents of the demons, who are generally known as the enemies of the demigods, was protected by the talents and tactics of Shukracharya. But Vishwarup, who was most powerful, composed a protective prayer known as Narayan Kavach. By this intelligent mantra, he took away the opulence of the demons and gave it to Mahendra, the king of the heaven. Right? So, Prabhupada says that the distinction between the Devas and the Asuras is that the Devas are devotees of Lord Vishnu, and the demons are devotees of demigods like Lord Shiva, Goddess Kali, or Goddess Durga, or Lord Brahma. And then he gives the example that Hiranyakashipu was a devotee of Brahma, Ravan was a devotee of Lord Shiva, Mahishasur was a devotee of Goddess Durga. And while the demigods are Vishnu Bhakta, the demons are Asura Tadda Vipraya, that they're against the Vishnu Bhaktas. To oppose the Vaishnava, the demons become devotees of Lord Shiva, Brahma, Kali, Durga, and so on. In the days of yore, many long years ago, there was animosity between the Devas and the Asuras, and the same spirit continues. For the devotees of Lord Shiva and Goddess Durga are always envious of Vaishnavas who are devotees of Lord Vishnu. So this is interesting that Prabhupada mentions it here. I wasn't able to find any like we always talk about the fact that there is animosity between the asuras and the devas, but there is no point where it says that the animosity began because of this reason. Now, there are some that you can kind of impute, that, like Prabhupada is saying, that because of their faith is reposed in different places. The Devas is Lord Vishnu, and the Asuras in demigods, but not the demigods that they fight with. Obviously, these are the higher order demigods, like Lord Shiva, Parvati Devi, Lord Brahma, etc. Then there is also animosity between their mothers. So Diti and Aditi, they were co-wives of Kashyap, and there was animosity between them. So one can assume that they inherited some of that animosity. But there's no particular event that talks about how this animosity came forth, or maybe it was always there. So what does Vishwarup do to protect the devas? Right, so he gives them a protective covering that is saturated with Vishnu mantra. So sometimes Vishnu mantra is called Vishnu Jwara, and Shiva mantra is called Shiva Jwara. Right, so we see so we see that there are situations where there is a conflict and one party deploys the Shiva Jwara, one party deploys the Vishnu Jwara. So we see that in the Krishna book, right? When there is uh, what is the son of Virochan, son of Prahlad, Banasur. When Banasur, he asks Lord Shiva to fight on his behalf against Krishna, right? And there is this conflict between Shiva Jwara and Vishnu Jwara, and obviously the Vishnu Jwara wins. Okay, moving on to the last verse 40. Yaya Gupta Sahasraksho Jigyasur Chamor Vibhu Tam Prahasah Mahendraya Vishwarupudhardi. Vishwarup, who was most liberal, spoke to King Indra Sahasraksha, the secret hymn that protected Indra and conquered the military power of the demons. Right. So this Gupta, the Gupta means that secret. Here also it means protected Saharsaksha. So Indra is referred to as Saharsaksha, one with 1,000 eyes. So we know that how Indra, because of the curse of Gautam Rishi, so when Indra became attracted to the wife of Gautam Rishi, Gautam Rishi got angry at him, and the initial curse was that your body will be covered by 1,000 female reproductive organ. And then Indra begged for forgiveness, so he changed the curse and said, okay, there will be 1,000 eyes. So he became Saharsaksha. So the Narayan Kavach will be explained in the next chapter. What I'll do is, if it is okay with all of you, is that I'll divide the Narayan Kavachas amongst you, and if you can recite the relevant verses, we have a week to practice there. And otherwise, it's essentially the recitation of the Narayan Kavach. There's a little bit of in the verses at the beginning. There are a few verses that talk about the preparations to do Narayan Kavach, and I'll go over that. It's interesting because those are some things that you can do before any Vedic ritual. And then after that, there is the Narayan Kavach, and then it concludes with the Palastuti. Right. So if it is okay with you, I know Gaurasundar Prabhu is not able to speak, so I'll not give it to him. But for the others, I will divide the verses, and if each of you can practice those verses, we'll also do a little bit of once we decide the Narayan Kavach, we'll do a little bit of the analysis of the structure of the Narayan Kavach. Okay, so I'll stop over here, see if there's any comments or discussions.
Prabhu, one way also for seniority, it's also by ashram, no? If somebody is a sannyasi ashram, is a more senior, no? Okay, it can be by ashram as well.
By ashram, yes. It kind of by it's like spiritual seniority, but you're right that generally the sannyasis are considered to be senior than the grahasthas, right? So there is definitely that aspect of seniority.
Yeah, even though somebody is a young sannyasi, because he's young, but he has in a sannyas ashram, then we give him respect accordingly.
Yes, you'll see even a much older grahastha will be giving respect to younger sannyasis. Correct.
So
Okay.
we will be studying Narayana Kavacham and Namashtakam. Is it like
It's
other
not a Namashtakam. It's
Narayan Kavach? Okay.
Narayan Kavach is essentially praise to the different forms of Lord Narayan for protection. Right. And it's mostly devotees recite Narayan Kavach because it's very potent. It is mostly, as we'll see in the Kavach, it's mostly material protection. But at least for devotees, the understanding is that the material protection is to help them make spiritual advancements. Okay, so we'll end over here. वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितनां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णविंद की जय। शिला प्रभुपाद की जय। थाई गौर प्रेमानंदे। हरि
Okay.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.